Welcome back everybody to another episode of Direct Comparison. In today's episode, we're taking a look at the recently released Resident Evil 3 remake, and seeing how it compares to last year's remake of Resident Evil 2. For this comparison, both games are being played on the PC platform, with the graphical settings pushed up as high as possible at a 1440p resolution. However, the motion blur settings will be disabled to provide cleaner still images. Alright, now to kick this comparison off, let's start by taking a look at the different characters, starting with our lead protagonist. Like most sequels to the Resident Evil series, the lead protagonists are not the same. In Resident Evil 2, players either control Claire Redfield or the rookie cop Leon Kennedy, as they travel to a police station at the start of a major zombie outbreak. Players can choose which character they want to play as at the start, and can swap over to the other character on a second playthrough. Resident Evil 3 follows veteran Resident Evil hero Jill Valentine, who is trapped right in the center of the city during the worst of the outbreak. The campaign focuses almost exclusively around her, though does occasionally swap over to an Umbrella soldier named Carlos to help maintain the series' signature variety. As far as the quality goes, the models in both games look excellent, especially during the cinematic sequences. Textures and shaders look fantastic, and the strands of hair that move independently as they turn their heads looks amazing. The only downside to these models has to do with the way the RE engine handles shadow projections. There's a lot of pixelation on character faces because of this, with grid-like effects appearing underneath hairlines. Having the FXAA or TAA anti-aliasing method helps reduce this a bit, but you also sacrifice a lot of image clarity using these options. Enemy models like zombies, dogs, and lickers all remain the same between games. RE3 introduces a few new zombie models to help mix up the variety, but there's still quite a few reused models throughout, and no noticeable improvements to textures or geometry. However, I did notice a disappointing downgrade to the way zombie corpses are handled. In RE2, zombies will realistically stumble with some nice ragdoll physics effects when defeated, allowing them to fall over and lean against walls or stumble over furniture realistically. In RE3, these physics effects appear to have been removed almost entirely. There's a few instances like this hanging corpse where physics still function, but your typical zombie corpse won't react to the environment or the player once they're defeated. On top of that, the gore has also been toned down a great deal, with no limb dismemberment outside of the head exploding and some scripted gross-out cutscenes throughout the game. The main reasoning for this change is supposedly that it was done to save on resources for the larger hordes, but Resident Evil 3 rarely offers large zombie hordes. At most, there's maybe 4 or 5 zombies on screen at any given time, even less than the large hordes outside of the RPD at the start of the previous game. There's one sequence in the hospital where you're forced to fight off an attack in the lobby, and things do get a little hectic. But the zombies can now be seen evaporating, a lot like how zombies bubble away in Resident Evil 4. It's a shame considering in Resident Evil 2, zombies really never disappear, even after being completely defeated. I suspected a corpse disappeared at one point, but it turned out that that corpse had gotten up and hidden around the corner, waiting to surprise me later on. I generally don't know why this change was made, especially considering the RE engine is still suffering from the same terrible low-rate animations at extended distances, which is even more noticeable now that the environments are mostly outdoors. And then we have Resident Evil 3's big selling point, the Nemesis. As I mentioned in my previous video, the Nemesis is this huge monster that will chase the player throughout the game. He can never be stopped for good, so players are forced to evade as much as possible. Resident Evil 2 Remake features a similar enemy, commonly referred to as Mr. X, that will relentlessly pursue the player, and similarly cannot be killed with conventional firearms. Despite their drastically different appearance, these two brutes share a lot in common, and even use the exact same animations for things like walking through small doors. However, I do feel as though the AI for Mr. X is more impressive than the design used for Nemesis. In Resident Evil 2, Mr. X is triggered after passing a certain point in the story, and will continuously patrol the police station from then on out. If a player is detected by the tyrant either by being spotted or by making a loud sound, he'll immediately start to pursue, albeit with a slow yet still intimidating walk. Mr. X is a powerful foe, and can deal some massive damage if he manages to get a melee hit in, but otherwise he can't really do much, and once he's defeated, he'll stay down on his knee for a decently long time. Nemesis, on the other hand, isn't quite as dynamic. He doesn't really go on patrol routes around the city. He instead is triggered at specific points in the game's campaign, and will continuously chase the player either with a similar intimidating walking animation or with a terrifying sprint. Additionally, Nemesis can make use of several weapons and tools like a tentacle to grapple players, a rocket launcher, a flamethrower, and even parasitic creatures that can be attached to zombies. However, these last three abilities are also limited to scripted moments in the game, and by Act 2, Nemesis' behavior is limited to scripted boss battles, with no ability to chase the player in an open-ended environment at all. It's really a disappointing design choice, especially considering what Capcom had in place with Mr. X and the potential of building upon that horrifying design in a larger area. Which brings us to our next topic, the environments. In Resident Evil 2, players primarily explore an old museum retrofitted to function as the city's police station. It's a large facility, based very strongly off the floor layout of the original 1998 game, and expands upon it, with new rooms and much larger scale. Resident Evil 3, however, takes place mostly outside in Raccoon City itself, with lots of narrow alleyways and streets, along with some larger interior spaces like a hospital, underground lab, and a cameo appearance of some parts of the police station from before. Unlike Resident Evil 2, RE3's environments don't really build off of the original game's level layout. The city section feels very small in comparison, and the alleyways aren't nearly as dense or complex. There's also several missing areas like a big clock tower interior sequence and the city park. As far as the actual quality of the environments that are available in both games, RE3 maintains the same great quality featured in RE2. Textures are sharp and various object models are satisfyingly detailed. What's more, some areas of the RPD area are adjusted slightly to help retain continuity between the two titles. Since the sequence inside the police station with Carlos takes place prior to the events of Resident Evil 2, many aspects of the layout are altered. The puzzles, for example, are now covered up with sheets. The door to the West Wing is now open, and other doors are still locked. And players can even witness key events that set up Leon and Claire's adventure, like Marvin getting bitten, and the officers in the West Hallway being slaughtered by the liquor. These are nice callbacks, though there are a few inconsistencies later on when Jill arrives outside, including a large burning construction site that's not at all visible in Resident Evil 2, and a new fire truck that was never parked on the street previously. Though these are just minor discrepancies, and all things considered, it's still cool seeing the two games intertwined this way. Next up, we have lighting. Last year I praised Resident Evil 2 for its excellent lighting design, with some fantastic volumetric light sources, some nice coloration, and some dark and moody locations. Resident Evil 3 continues to build upon this excellent design, though there are a few minor improvements. The specular lighting, for example, is toned down a good amount, something that frequently appeared overblown in Resident Evil 2 when traveling outside on the rainy streets. It's not perfect still, and the lack of rain in some areas really makes this stand out more, but it isn't as much of a glaring problem as it was before. Additionally, the terrible screen space reflections have also been tweaked slightly. They still don't look great, but they're less obvious now, while still providing that reflective look to shinier surfaces. Shadow effects haven't seen very many improvements. In fact, the pixelized shadow maps appear slightly worse now due to the character model's longer hair. It really hurts an otherwise great character model design, and I'm afraid it might just be an issue with the design of the engine itself. That being said, environmental shadows and projections still look phenomenal, and are put to some great use with some nice spotlight locations in the alleyways to really help create a tense environment. Next, we have our effects. Again, not much has changed here. The fire effects have been touched up slightly and look a little bit cleaner, but otherwise, it looks as though the same effects are being used in both games. You can even see the same style of liquid simulation coming out of these sewer pipes in RE3 that's used up on the roof in RE2 when trying to extinguish the chopper fire. The only downside to the effects in the new game is that the physics have been toned down a great deal, especially with enemy corpses. And then of course, we had to talk about the changes that have been made to the gameplay design. RE3 offers a few new gameplay mechanics. Players can now press the spacebar or right bumper if you're using a console to dodge enemies, just like in the original game in 1999. However, if this is timed perfectly, players can now trigger a slow-motion auto-aim, allowing them to target weak points more easily. This dodge maneuver makes the game a lot easier, as you can drop Nemesis to his knees very easily just by carefully timing your dodges and shooting him in the chest, whereas in Resident Evil 2 there's no such maneuver. However, RE2 does offer its own unique escape mechanic, using equipped items like knives or grenades. If an enemy grapples a player holding one of these items, they'll automatically trigger an escape animation to break free, avoiding taking any damage. RE3 doesn't offer this ability. The knife is still in the game, but it no longer has durability, and can now be manually equipped and used to slash at enemies. This is another odd choice, as it means any enemy that grapples you will automatically deal damage no matter what, which makes it all the more strange that they even bothered to put in this new QuickTime button prompt. RE3 also does away with the classic ink ribbon item, meaning players can now save their game however often they want. On top of this, checkpoints are also automatically generated, cutting down on time redoing puzzles or looting an area. This is an interesting change, as it was previously a part of the hardcore difficulty mode as a way to please veteran fans, but it at least cuts down on time spent juggling inventory items just to save your game. This also goes hand in hand with RE3's much faster pace. RE2 is a much more slow and horror-oriented experience, with claustrophobic environments, limited ammunition, more puzzles, and challenging configurations of enemies. RE3, however, starts off at a sprint, with Nemesis showing up within the first few minutes and already chasing you down. The game eventually calms down, providing a few zombies at a time, but quickly ramps up in intensity again, requiring quick dodge rolls and lots of running back and forth to stay alive. This is consistent with what the original RE3 game was like by comparison, so while fans of Resident Evil 2 Remake may not be all for the more action-oriented tone, the game at least does stay true to that aspect of the source material. Finally, let's wrap up with a sound comparison. Now of course, these weapons, locations, and monsters aren't identical, but I'll try my best to match up these scenarios. Which game do you think has the better overall sound design?
Couldn't have been a zombie. It didn't stick around.
Jesus, stay back! Oh no. Okay, better move it.
And that wraps up this episode of Direct Comparison. Overall, Resident Evil 3 does seem like a bit of a step back from its predecessor. It's not necessarily a bad game. In fact, I'm really enjoying the game on my second playthrough already, as the extra buffs for replaying the game do feel very rewarding. Though, going back and replaying the Resident Evil 2 remake reminded me just how great a game that one is. And it's a shame so many fantastic design elements are missing from this most recent title. Things like Mr. X's AI patrol concepts could have absolutely been incorporated into the design of the Nemesis more effectively. And the missing clock tower and park area feel like a huge missed opportunity, as they would not only have added some great variety to the game, but would have also extended its already short playtime. Additionally, just like with the original game, the lack of multiple character storylines does drastically hurt the replay value here, when compared to Resident Evil 2, something that would have worked fine had they also brought back the choice system from the '99 classic. But what do you guys think? Are you enjoying the Resident Evil 3 remake, or do you still prefer Resident Evil 2? Let me know in the comments section. If you want to learn more about the Resident Evil franchise, be sure to check out my full history of Resident Evil video linked in the description. And of course, don't forget to like and subscribe for more videos posted every week.